Hey everybody, it is the TheAngryHoneyBadger here, and today we'll be taking a look at Jarvan. First we'll start off with his abilities and what order you want to max him out in, then we'll go over his runes and his masteries, followed by both counters that are good and bad, and team synergies. Finally we'll look at his items you'll want to consider purchasing, and then we'll take a look at his pros and cons. Be sure to like this video and subscribe if you find it helpful, but for now, let's take a look at Jarvan IV, the exemplar of Demacia.
Go around the badger.
First, let's start off with Jarvan's passive, Martial Cadence. Jarvan's initial basic attack on a target deals bonus physical damage. This effect cannot occur again for a short duration of time. As for Jarvan's Q ability, this is his Dragon Strike. We're going to put a point into this at level 1, and we're going to be maxing this out first. Jarvan extends his lance, dealing physical damage and lowering the armor of all enemies in its path. Additionally, if you have a Demacian standard in front of it, you will knock up all enemies along the path. And as for Jarvan's W, this is his Golden Aegis. We're going to put a point into this at level 3 and max this out last. Jarvan's going to gain a temporary shield that will absorb damage and slow enemies around him. As for Jarvan's E ability, this is his Demacian standard. We're going to put a point into this at level 2 and max this out second. Passively, Demacian standard is going to gain you attack speed. Actively, you're going to throw a flag down and deal damage to nearby enemies. The standard lasts for 8 seconds and grants surrounding allied champions attack speed. And as for Jarvan's ultimate, this is his Cataclysm. Jarvan heroically leaps onto a target in battle, dealing damage and creating terrain around him for 3.5 seconds. He can collapse the terrain if he reactivates the ability. As for his rune page, I like to take attack damage marks, some armor seals and some health per level seals, magic resist glyphs, and attack damage quintessences. As for his masteries page, I like to take 21 in the offense and 9 in the defense. Here's the page I recommend taking. As for champions that counter Jarvan, first let's look at Yorick. The constant spam and harass is a bit difficult to trade well with. He can also sustain through damage with Omen of Famine healing. Next is Aatrox. His knockup, slow, and sustain make it hard to put him in a position to kill him off. He also has his passive to rely on, so even if you burst him down, he might not even die. Finally, there's Olaf. His slowing axe and his true damage is hard to fight around when you dive in onto him. He can't really escape your ultimate, but once he's low, his passive will kick in, and that might actually turn the battle in his favor. As for matchups that favor Jarvan, let's start out with Jace. Although he does have range, you have more raw damage, and his range is low when he uses it. All you have to do is get on top of him, hit him hard early in the first 2 levels, and he'll have to play safe the rest of the lane. Next is Vladimir. A safe Vlad will do fine, but if you can get on top of him and deal damage to him, he'll burn his blood pool, and this makes it difficult for him to play aggressive. Also, make sure that his blood pool is down before you jump on him for a final dunk. And finally, there's Irelia. As long as you don't overextend in this matchup, you can lay down harass and then go for more meaningful trades to get a slight lead. Beware of good Irelia players, they can win this matchup, but if you just pay attention, you can win it. As for champions that synergize well with Jarvan, those include Orianna, Gnar, Yasuo, Katarina, and Misfortune. Jarvan can carry Orianna's ult in for great wombo combos, Gnar can ult people into the Cataclysm walls, Yasuo gets a free knockup, and both Katarina and Fortune can wreck people stuck inside of the Cataclysm. As for the items you want to take when you play as Jarvan, I like to start off with the Crystalline Flask and Health Pots and a Warding Totem. This is going to help you have a little bit of extra mana in lane, which will let you lay down that early harass, which will overall get you ahead. It's also really easy to farm backline creeps with your Q ability, so having the mana is helpful if you're in a matchup where you actually can't really get to melee all the minions. You'll be able to still pick them all up with your abilities. My first few trips back to base, I initially start building anything that will go into a Ravenous Hydra. The wave clear is great for pushing, and it gives you a lot of bonus AD once you finish this item off that will allow all of your abilities to deal a lot of damage. Get the Ravenous Hydra. At this point, I'll usually start to think about the first part of my boots, and I'll start to think about my overall boot matchup. I either will take Ninja Tabi if I'm in a heavy AD lane and I need the defense, or I'll take Merc Treads if their team has a lot of magic resist or a lot of stuns, slows, fears, or anything where the tenacity is helpful. The next item I typically start to build will be the pieces of a Brutalizer because I will pick up a Youmuu's Ghostblade. The cooldown reduction is helpful along with the armor penetration. After I've acquired my first 3 items, I then start to pick up a Last Whisper. It's a cheap item to pick up, it gives you some decent offense, but it more importantly gives you a lot of penetration. Anyone you jump on is going to immediately explode. If you're in a matchup or in a game where you want to have more penetration and more cooldown reduction and you really need health and you can't really do the full damage itself, you can pick up a black Cleaver. It is a good item, gives you a lot of damage, and it more importantly will give you a lot of health to work with. As for my 5th item, I will almost always be picking up an Infinity Edge, further increasing all the damage I do, and now at this point when I jump in and can't dunk someone with just my ultimate and an EQ, I can hit them one time with an auto and get a huge crit to finish them off. As for a final item, you have a couple choices here. You can either pick up something like a GA to come back in fights and pick up a little bit of magic resist and armor. You can also pick up something with just more health like an Omen and some armor too, so you can survive a little bit longer if you do engage hard for your team. But if you want to go with an offensive defensive item like a Wit's End or a Ma'a Mortius, those are both helpful choices for dealing with some types of damage you might not have resists for. Moving on to his pros and cons, let's go over his pros. He's got good early game damage, he's very disruptive in team fights, he has good escape and engage in lane, he's got crazy burst when you do build him full AD, and a strong passive that a lot of people forget about. As for cons, missing your EQ hurts your damage output greatly. Falling behind hurts your burst potential overall, which makes it hard to assassinate people. No more passive armor on his E is a little bit unfortunate. Good trades do cost mana, which is more important why you should land them. And full AD means you're not a full tank for engagements. Be careful about that. If you overextend on engaging, you're probably gonna die. And as for my personal thoughts about Jarvan in the top lane, the dude is super fun to play. I've really enjoyed him up there. He's not bad in the jungle by any means. He's still good, and he still does fine there. But because he lost that armor, it makes the jungle hurt a little bit more. And it still affects him, obviously, in top lane not having that armor. But he does way more surprising damage to people than I think they expect. And you can really win a lot of early matchups because of this. You'll force people to go back early. You'll get a level and minion advantage. You can go back by maybe the Tiamat part of your Hydra, TP back into lane, and then dunk them once you hit 6 because you'll poke them down really, really effectively with your Q. So he really surprises people in the top lane, and you can snowball leads incredibly early. The other thing you can do too is because he is a pseudo jungler more so, you can just roam down to mid lane and then just jump in with another EQ and then dunk the mid laner, and you'll have way too much burst for them to live through if your mid laner even helps a little bit. So Jarvan is a early game snowball menace that a lot of people don't see the damage come from. So if you're looking for somebody that can really do a lot of damage and is overall a fun champion and just a little bit different since we don't see him in this role all the time, we typically see him in the jungle more so as a tank, you might want to give him a shot. He's very fun and very effective. I hope that this building guide helps you. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments, and I wish you all the best of luck on the fields of justice. I'll see all of you in the next build video.